All right, by subscriber request, I'm going to talk about where you should move, or I guess I'm just going to go over the different cities in the Lower Mainland and Fraser Valley for people who are moving to BC, so stay tuned. I'm Thatagentkelly. I talk about Canadian real estate in my local market of Abbotsford and the Fraser Valley. And if you get any value or entertainment from these videos, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and if you want to chat, you can do so by scrolling down into the description, clicking on the link I provided. You can book yourself right into my calendar so me and you can chat. All right, so where should you live if you move to BC? I'm just gonna go over some cities and then you can be the deciding factor of where you wanna live when you move here. Now, I'm not gonna go over the prices and rents of every single city, but as a rule of thumb, the further east you get away from Vancouver, the prices go down. Rents, home prices, everything gets a little bit cheaper the further away you go from Vancouver, including gas, pretty much everything. All right, starting off with West Vancouver. West Vancouver is an ultra prestigious city. It's not actually the west side of Vancouver. West Vancouver is its own municipality, and it is where all the rich people live. So there is an area called the British Properties up on the mountainside, or maybe it's a hill. I don't know, it's a hill. It's an elevated surface, all right? And on this surface, the average home price is probably like $5 or $6 million, maybe even higher, but it has beautiful views of the ocean, the Lower Mainland, downtown Vancouver, everything. And a lot of that area was being purchased by foreigners before they added in the foreign buyers tax in 2016. And that really put a damper on prices in West Vancouver, at least in the British properties. But yeah, if you have, $5 million, West Vancouver is probably where you're gonna want to live. Or you might need a little bit more than that, maybe like $15 million. But either way, West Vancouver. Now, North Vancouver is slightly northwest of Vancouver, and I guess it's just really an extension of Vancouver. Like, it's not, I guess, so West Vancouver's average detached home is $3 million, and North Vancouver's average detached home is $2 million. So it's still really expensive, and it's more like, it's just like a suburb of Vancouver, I guess. It's outdoorsy, trails, hiking trails, views of the mountain, everything you'd get in Vancouver, you get in North Vancouver. And I'd say it's a little bit cheaper than Vancouver, depending on, you know what, I don't know, scratch that. I'm not a Vancouver realtor. Just understand that Vancouver is further west and a little bit north of Vancouver itself. And people who like to ride bikes and go for hikes and stuff like that, they live in Vancouver, and they also have $5 million. So North Vancouver. So we have Vancouver, which Vancouver is made up of a bunch of different areas, like most cities are. I'm more familiar with Vancouver than I am with North Van and West Van, but basically, you have downtown Vancouver, East Van, West Side Vancouver, UBC. And then within downtown is split up into like 5 different sectors. So I'm not going to go over everything. Just know that if you live in downtown Vancouver, you probably don't even need a car to live your life. Like most of the people that I know who live in downtown Vancouver, they just use ride sharing and stuff like that. Downtown Vancouver obviously has a finance or a business district. All the high-paying white-collar jobs are kind of, on 1 or 2 streets down there. It's a big melting pot of a bunch of different ethnicities. There's no really like dominant ethnicity in the downtown core of Vancouver, but if you want that city lifestyle but you can't afford downtown Vancouver, East Vancouver is similar pricing to Burnaby, but a little bit closer to downtown Vancouver than Burnaby. So within Vancouver, for cheaper pricing, you're going to be looking at East Vancouver, and which obviously, as I said before, anytime you go further out east away from downtown, the prices get cheaper. And just to go over, just so you have, kind of a reference point for how expensive things are here, a 1-bed in downtown Vancouver is probably going to rent for $2,500 a month, maybe even more now, maybe even pushing $3,000, whereas a 2-bed it's got to be over $4,000 now, or at the very least pushing $4,000 a month. Sometimes as high as $6,000 if you're renting something in the Shangri-La, which is another prestigious apartment building in downtown Vancouver. So just as a reference point, from downtown Vancouver, the further you go east, those prices I just quoted you are going to likely get cheaper. And again, I would go over prices with you, but it's really, It's really difficult because there's so many different areas in all of these cities. It's really hard for me to quote you prices, but if I had to guess, a good quality 1-bedroom apartment in downtown Vancouver is probably 700 grand, and you could probably get something similar in East Vancouver for like low sixes, mid sixes kind of deal. All right, Burnaby, which is the closest city east of Vancouver. Not a big fan of Burnaby in my opinion. I just don't like it, to be honest with you. I don't really have a real reason why. I just don't like the vibe and the feeling of the city, but there are a lot of people out there who love it. And there are two main areas in Burnaby, Metrotown and Brentwood. They're both two high density areas with massive towers built around a massive mall. There's the Brentwood Mall and the Metrotown Mall. Brentwood is actually a really new area. 8 years ago, there wasn't much there. Within the last 8 years, they are just throwing up towers everywhere. Personally, if I were to live in Burnaby, I'd probably pick Brentwood, my personal opinion. And yeah, that's basically Burnaby for you. I guess I would say from Burnaby, you're probably, 20 minutes to downtown Vancouver. Possibly more if there's traffic, but 20 minutes, give or take. All right, next we have Coquitlam, and I actually really like Coquitlam personally. I just like the feeling of that city. There's a lot of nature in Coquitlam, a lot of parks. There's a lot of more family-oriented neighborhoods than I believe there is in Burnaby. I could be wrong. I don't know a whole lot about Burnaby. When I was a plumber, I used to go there every single day. But from the neighborhoods that I've driven through in Burnaby, there's not a lot of neighborhoods that give me that nice, warm, family feeling. And this is just strictly an opinion, but my opinion anyways. But Coquitlam has, downtown Coquitlam City Center is not run down. It's nice. It's pretty new. There's new high-rises everywhere. There's a new mall that they're still developing on Coquitlam Center. They just recently added the SkyTrain there less than 10 years ago. And then there's two really nice areas that everybody seems to like. There's Burke Mountain and Westwood Plateau, which are the more prestigious areas in Coquitlam up on the hill. But overall, Coquitlam's a great option if you want to live somewhere, because it's probably, there's Brentwood is 15 minutes up the road from Coquitlam, and Coquitlam is probably 15% cheaper than Brentwood, I want to say. So it's a whole lot cheaper than Burnaby. And much cheaper than Vancouver, but you're probably, 25 minutes into downtown Vancouver from Coquitlam. And if you live in Coquitlam Center, you're a few SkyTrain stops away from being in downtown Vancouver. So I personally like Coquitlam for white-collar people. Blue-collar people, it's also a great option, or just all walks of life, Coquitlam is a great option. I forgot to talk about Richmond. So Richmond is southeast, I guess, or maybe just south of Vancouver. And Richmond is in a flood zone. So Richmond and Tsawwassen, which are basically side by side, they're both in a flood zone. If we ever have an earthquake, you can kiss those cities goodbye. But they are decently close to Vancouver. They're much cheaper than Vancouver. And the awesome thing about Richmond and Tsawwassen is because they are so far south, these cities are so close to the water, the waves from the water end up pushing the clouds inland. Therefore, Richmond, Tsawwassen, White Rock, anything along that southern shore there is going to get a lot more sun than anything else in Metro Vancouver's area, or Metro Vancouver's region, or the Fraser Valley, or wherever else. So the bonus with Richmond, Tsawwassen, White Rock, you're going to get a lot more sun there. However, Richmond and Tsawwassen are in flood zones where if we ever did get that massive earthquake on the west coast that people have been talking about for 100 years, you can bet that those cities are pretty much going to be wiped off the face of the earth. This is not fear, uncertainty, and doubt. These aren't my words. This is what I've heard. But I mean, Richmond overall, you're 30 minutes probably to downtown Vancouver. It's a big city. There's quite a bit to do there. There's tons of amenities. It's a very dense city. It's mostly, I believe, Chinese and Korean living there. Not that this matters or there's anything wrong with that, but if you are Chinese or Korean, you're probably going to want to live around, other people that are, familiar with your culture and the way that you guys live your life, right? So Richmond might be the spot for you. Pretty much all the businesses and the signage in Richmond will have, English and Chinese or English and Korean on the signage. So that's most of the demographic in Richmond. All right, next is Port Coquitlam. Not much to say about Port Coquitlam. It's basically just an extension of Coquitlam, but not as nice and further east, so it's a little bit cheaper than Coquitlam, and you're a little bit further away. So Port Coquitlam, another good option for blue collar people or even white collar people. Just hop on the SkyTrain there. Port Moody is the most northern city in Metro Vancouver's region. I love Port Moody. However, it does get a little bit more rain than everywhere else because it's so far north, and all the wind, like I said, from the water is pushing the clouds towards Port Moody. But basically, you know, it's right on the water. It's got a hip little downtown core, tons of breweries and stuff to do. SkyTrain. You're a little bit further away from downtown Vancouver there, but you know, it's a hip little area. People love Port Moody. But it is expensive. It's cheaper than, or it's more expensive than Coquitlam. It's a lot more expensive than Poco. And the reason is it's a really desirable city and there's very little inventory within that city. Okay, I'm gonna talk about New West now. New West is the oldest city in Metro Vancouver, and it actually used to be the capital of BC a long time ago. Now it's Victoria, but New West, it's pretty affordable in my opinion. It's the most affordable city within the Lower Mainland. There's the Lower Mainland, and then further east there's the Fraser Valley. So I know New West is probably the furthest eastern city in the Lower Mainland. It's also the cheapest city. It's older. It's also dead center of basically everything. You can drive anywhere in 40 minutes from New West. Downtown Vancouver, probably West Vancouver, Richmond, Chilliwack. That is as center as you're possibly going to get is New West. And there's a strip club. All right, on to the Fraser Valley now, my market. And what city am I starting with here? I'm gonna start with Surrey. Surrey has a massive South Asian population, and it was, I believe, the fastest growing city in Canada a few years back. Now I think it's Kelowna. But Surrey's growing so fast that its population is basically expected to outgrow Vancouver's population by 2030. Surrey has one of the largest land masses in Canada just by how actually big the city is. And Surrey Central is growing at a very, very quick rate. And I think eventually they will have large commercial towers in the downtown core of Surrey. They will employ high-paying white-collar jobs in the downtown core of Surrey at one point. Surrey, obviously, more affordable than Coquitlam, more affordable than Burnaby, more affordable than New West, depending on where you're living in Surrey, because it is further east. Mostly blue-collar workers living here. Surrey overall, just like any other city, you got to watch out for some areas. Like if I was growing a family, I probably wouldn't want to live in certain parts of North Surrey. I probably wouldn't want to live in Surrey Central, and I probably wouldn't want to live in Newton. But you know, Fleetwood, Fraser Heights, Clayton Heights, Cloverdale, these are all great areas. South Surrey, I love South Surrey, and just like Tsawwassen and Richmond, you're gonna get more sun in South Surrey because, you know, you're against the water. And then besides South Surrey, we have White Rock, which is actually its own municipality. I like to call it mini San Francisco because all of White Rock is basically on a hill, you know, with $2 million, $3 million homes on the hill overlooking the ocean. And then there's a beach right there called Crescent Beach, and we have the biggest pier in Canada going from that beach out to the water. And then there's a strip with a bunch of, you know, awesome restaurants and stuff to do like that on the strip of White Rock Beach. So I love White Rock. I hope to one day end up in South Surrey or White Rock. That's probably my favorite place in the valley. So then we have Langley. Langley is just east of Surrey. This is probably as affordable as living gets in Metro Vancouver's area without being unbearably far away from Vancouver. Like if you have to commute a lot for work, or you're a tradesman who has to drive all over the place for different construction sites or different services and stuff like that. Langley, I find, is usually the best bet. That seems to be the place where most tradesmen work, or most people that have to commute, not work. That's where they end up living, because the prices to how far you have to commute for your daily life just seems to be the perfect mix for most people. Obviously, it's never perfect. People would like to be closer, but in terms of pricing, you can get, a one-bedroom condo, good one-bedroom condo in the 400s, possibly even a 1990s two-bedroom in the 400,000s, and you're about 40 to 45 minutes away from downtown Vancouver, depending on when you leave your house and where in Langley you live. So that seems to be the area that most people end up if they're trades workers and stuff like that. And Langley actually has the SkyTrain coming to the downtown core of Langley by 2028. There's nothing there now, but is supposed to have the SkyTrain by 2028. So if you're moving here and you're a tradesman, for whatever reason, Langley seems to be the place that everybody ends up. I even lived in Langley for a little bit, so that's probably where you might want to look. Maple Ridge is north of Langley, but it's about the same distance east from Vancouver as Langley. It's just not as accessible to downtown Vancouver as Langley is because it's not as close to Highway 1 as Langley is, but it's about the same distance east. It's just more out of the way. And as a result of that, Maple Ridge is probably about 10% cheaper than Langley, just like any other city. You know, I'm not a big fan of Maple Ridge's downtown core, but there are some really nice family areas on the outskirts of Maple Ridge. I personally like Maple Ridge. Maple Ridge has 3 beaches, so there's actually quite a bit to do there. In the summertime, it's very close to, you know, hiking, hunting, fishing, all that stuff. And again, it's more of a blue collar city. All right, next we have Abbotsford. That's where I live. You're about an hour outside of downtown Vancouver. It's about the same as Maple Ridge. Maple Ridge is much closer east. It's about 30 minutes closer east, but Abbotsford is right on the highway. So the travel time is lessened by the fact that you're just more accessible to downtown Vancouver from Abbotsford. So it's about an hour drive from Maple Ridge or Abbotsford. However, Abbotsford is a little bit cheaper for whatever reason, and that's why I'd prefer to live in Abbotsford, because the travel time is about the same, but you're paying a little bit less in Abbotsford. Just like any other city, Abbotsford has some really nice family areas. East Abbotsford's really nice. South Abbotsford's really nice. Central Abbotsford isn't that great, but West Abbotsford's okay too, depending on where you go in West Abbotsford. So again, it's really just the downtown cores of these cities that aren't that great, but they will be gentrified, so I wouldn't be too worried about that personally. Mission. So Mission is just like Maple Ridge is to Langley. It's, you know, the same distance east from Vancouver, but it is much cheaper than Abbotsford because it is much further north from Abbotsford. It's pretty out of the way. Like, you could probably get a detached home in Mission in the 600,000s now. And it wouldn't even be a bad detached home. But Mission's a small city. It's mostly undeveloped. It's really old. You can definitely tell that, you know, cowboys were, you know, on horses walking through the downtown core in Mission. And yeah, it's mostly undeveloped. It's the country still, has a population of about 40,000 people. It's probably the smallest municipality that we have out here, but I like it for investing. It's really cheap, get in the market. But yeah, you'd probably take about an hour and a half to drive to downtown Vancouver from Mission if I had to guess. All right, Chilliwack. Chilliwack is the furthest east city we have out here from downtown Vancouver. You're about an hour and a half outside of downtown Vancouver, but Chilliwack is beautiful. My parents live in Chilliwack. The mountain views are immaculate. It's the best mountain views you're gonna get around here. You can get a nice detached home from, I wanna say, like 700,000 to 800,000. They might still be a bit higher, maybe mid-8s kind of thing, but some great options there. I would live in Chilliwack personally. It's just so far away. Like, it's great if you can live from home, or you run some business that allows you to not have to leave your house and actually commute somewhere. Chilliwack is perfect. It's a beautiful city. I love Chilliwack. If you have to commute every day, it's too far. It's not going to be an enjoyable experience for you. It's just too far away. But other than that, if you have a business where you don't have to be commuting back and forth all the time, Chilliwack's great. Go for it. It's very cheap. It's a beautiful city. All right, now something that's not close to Vancouver, but it's in BC. I'm not going to mention every single city in BC, just the ones that most people talk about. Kelowna. This is basically a vacation destination. Everybody from the Lower Mainland and the Valley goes out to Kelowna basically once a year, especially during the summertime, because it is really nice in the summertime there. They have tons of wineries, they have tons of beaches. Everybody there is beautiful and goes to the gym, right? They have summer like 5 months of the year and winter 7 months of the year. And it's basically like the, I don't know, I guess it's like the LA of like BC. That might be a horrible way of looking at it, but it used to be a lot cheaper. It's not that cheap anymore. Now it's probably like the same price as like a further east part of Langley, but still a great option. It's beautiful there. People love Kelowna. Tons of people from the Valley and the Lower Mainland moving to Kelowna every single year. And if Kelowna is too expensive for you, which by the way, Kelowna is in a region called the Okanagan, which is about 4.5 hours away from Vancouver. So Kelowna, in this Okanagan, beside Kelowna, a few honorable mentions that are cheaper would be Kamloops, which is really cheap. That city's not that nice, but it is very cheap. I can get a detached home for $550,000 there. And then you have Penticton, which is another nice vacation destination, and Osoyoos. Now, I don't know how the jobs are in these cities. I'm gonna guess it's mostly, you know, people, blue collar jobs and stuff like that. Highly doubt there's any high paying white collar jobs. They're mostly vacation cities or, you know, retiree destinations, but still beautiful cities. If you wanted to move out here, Penticton, Kelowna, Kamloops, especially, you know, at Kamloops where the entry point is super low, like $500,000 to get into a detached home. If you're moving here from another province, would definitely look into it. So what would I recommend? If you're the artsy type who wants to live close to a city, you're going to want Vancouver, North Van, or Burnaby. If you're a blue-collar worker, you're probably going to want, you know, no closer to Vancouver than New West or Coquitlam, unless you're making like $150K or something like that. But likely you're going to end up in Surrey or Langley. Or maybe Maple Ridge. That seems to be where all the blue-collar workers end up. So Langley is probably the number one. If you're a blue-collar worker moving somewhere else, I would definitely look into Langley. So thanks for watching this video. Hope it helped. I know it's super vague. If you have any questions, I'm happy to shoot videos on any other questions you guys have. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Peace.